Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. We'll call the Select Board meeting to order in a few minutes. We're going to start with County Commissioners tonight, and I'll turn it over to Tom, who is the chair. I will just note that Brooke Moore is online, so we'll be taking all votes this evening by roll call. And Brooke, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good.
Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll call to order the County Commissioners meeting for April 29th, 2026 at 5:30 p.m. First order of business is County Commission meeting is being audio and video recorded. Next up is public comment for items related to county business. For items that are not otherwise on our agenda, we'll be holding Select Board public comment when we move to Select Board. No one online. Seeing none, there's no new business. Next is approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. Minutes from December 17th and payroll and treasury warrants February, March, and April pending contracts as well.
Motion to approve.
Motion moved by Dawn, second by Matt. All those in favor by roll call. Dawn?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Commissioners' reports, comments. Seeing none,
Nope.
Accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Matt, second by Dawn. All those in favor by roll call. Dawn?
Aye.
Malcolm? Matt?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Madam Chair?
Thank you. Okay, I will call the Select Board meeting to order at 5:31. I think we have a couple of additional announcements is the only change to the agenda. And otherwise we will accept it as written, and I will turn it over to the town manager to make the announcements.
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded, and Eric is going to take the next two announcements.
Thank you so much. So your first announcement is to just say who applied for the planning board vacancy seat. And we have 3 applicants, Liza Hatton, Clay Evans, and Campbell Sutton. We will be announcing these candidates also at your next meeting on May 13th. And then appointments, which are going to be a joint appointment between the select board and the remaining members of the planning board, will occur at your meeting on May 20th. We have our annual committee appointments, and all this information is online. There is a timeline that shows when applications are due, which is for all committees would be May 8th at noon. That's a Friday. So if you are interested in applying for any of the committees that we have openings on, please do so. We have applications on the website. Appointments, we're going to have a couple of hearings for candidates to review their applications and introduce themselves to the select board. And then your committee appointments will be held on June 10th. Again, a lot of information on the town's website.
Okay, moving on with the announcements. The 2026 annual town meeting starts this coming Monday, May 4th. Starts at 4:30 p.m. It's at the Nantucket High School. The town election is scheduled for Tuesday, May 19th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the high school. And we wanted to share with the board and the public some information about town meeting. This is our website. So looking at it, on the left, there are some project pages, we call them, for some of the bigger articles, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and a couple of others. There's a list of many documents. The warrant itself with the FinCom motions is on here. We just put out the voter's guide yesterday. That is on here. And a number of other documents. There are maps and videos about informational sessions on some of the project pages. And up on the upper right, there's a tax rate calculator. So if you wish to understand for your particular property what your tax bill might look like, if any of the debt exclusions or capital exclusion is approved, that can tell you what that will look like. And tomorrow at 5, there is an informational session about Article 13, which is municipal employee housing. That is at 5 p.m. and it is remote only. Information is on the town website. And yeah, okay, that's it for town meeting and the election. Erica, I think you are going to do the next announcement number 5 because things have changed here a bit.
Okay, and I will note the sewer director, David Gray, and our stormwater manager, Charles Johnson, are also here. And they can give you some technical information if you need that. We are undergoing a Washington Street stormwater replacement project that's going to begin on Sunday, May 3rd. And it is going to be night work. It's going to start at 9 p.m. and go through 7 a.m. Sunday evenings through Saturday mornings. We're hoping that it'll only take 3 weeks. It's going to go through Thursday, April 21st, so that it should be wrapped up before the Memorial Day weekend holiday. During that time, we are going to, and the agenda actually says there's going to be day work. That came out of a change that we had today in a meeting. It's going to be primarily night work. The only day work will be the actual road repaving. We're going to be implementing the reverse truck route, which brings the trucks out through South Beach Street, Easton Street, Cliff Road to Nantucket Road. And trucks that travel between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. are going to need to take that in and out of town. There will be associated parking bans along the route so that the big trucks, the semis, can get through. There will also be an overnight parking ban on Union Street, Salem Street, and Washington Street. And we do actually have a map of that I'm going to
Pat, did you
share.
have a question?
I was just a comment. I think that's the parking ban should, the note, your parking ban on Cliff Road should do it, but there have been there's a lot of work going on up there.
Yep,
And-
and
and
we
they-
are well aware that there's businesses that are going to be impacted. There are going to be private projects that are going to be impacted. And the idea is to get that information out to people ASAP. For the Union Street blocking, this will be a total blocking ban from Francis Street to Salem Street. And then the 2 spaces on Salem Street between Union and Washington, and then about 2 to 3 spaces on Washington here. And just so everybody knows, this is because Washington Street is the main way that emergency responders and the NRTA wave bus gets to and from town. In order for those wave buses, especially, there's one route that takes still one of the larger buses and not just the smaller electric buses. Plus, if a fire engine needs to get into the downtown, this is going to be the only route that they're going to be able to take. And they're going to need to have full and complete access. So that was the only way that this was going to be approved by the fire department. So I know it's going to be a huge inconvenience. We are going to have cones in place, signage in place. Cars that are left are going to be towed at the owner's expense. So it's going to be a kind of big, impactful project, considering the project area is relatively small. But we're hoping that the contractor is going to get this done as quickly as possible. David and Charles, did you want to add anything?
Can I just ask, when we do tow cars these days, where are they going to?
I believe Nantucket Auto Body does the towing, and
And they hold them?
They hold them.
Good evening.
The David Gray along with Charles Johnson. The biggest issue that we're running on is high groundwater down there and dewatering. So we were going to try to have one lane open. It's impossible, and it's a safety concern. So in the meetings that we've had with the fire department and police department in the wave, the easiest way for this to be done is all night work and to just implement these parking restrictions overnight. The contractor's coming out again on Saturday with a truckload of cones. So we're going to have a lot of cones along Union Street, and Charles has done a lot of signage already. We got some more flyers that are going to be going out tomorrow morning to a lot of the different area residents and stuff like that, as well as the businesses along the reverse truck route. That's going to be critical, and that's something we're going to try to focus on a lot tomorrow, especially with the inns that are down that way. Nantucket Hotel and the different inns on Cliff. And I don't know if Charles has anything else to add.
I think so. I think
Okay.
everything's been covered.
All right. We do have a detour route here too, and this is more for light traffic. So just your regular vehicles, not the truck traffic going down to the Steamship Authority, but we're encouraging everybody to take Union Street into town unless they, come from the west, and take Orange Street out of town, just to avoid this area if possible on Washington Street. And I had one announcement to add, and this kind of piggybacks on this in terms of the blockings down on Easton Street and Cliff Road. We have 2 weeks of structure moves. The land bank had purchased property down at 41 Jefferson Ave. Those buildings are going to be repurposed and moved to property that the Affordable Housing Trust owns in Nantucket and the land bank owns on Hummock Pond Road. The route for those house moves are going to be Jefferson Ave, North Beach Street, Easton Street, Cliff Road, and then either out to Nantucket Road or Crooked Lane to get over to Hummock Pond Road. That is also going to necessitate a daytime parking ban. There is going to be pretty much 24-hour no parking in areas of Easton Street. That would be between Beach Street and the intersection with North Water Street, and then the hill going up Cliff Road that has to remain open. And then of course, all the parking that is on street until we almost get to something natural. So that is in order for those structures. I think in total there are, I can't remember, believe if it's 5 or 7 structures in total are going to be moving. So in order to accommodate that, and those moves will be Tuesday through Thursday on the 12th through 14th and 19th through 21st.
There's 2 or 3 projects along that stretch, and you probably know who's running them.
I know that Barrett Enterprises, who is the hauler for the over the roads, is aware of that, and they planned on reaching out to them.
All right, good.
Okay, next we have an announcement that is part of a Vineyard Wind agreement. Vineyard Wind has provided the town with a summary of its debris infrastructure failure incident response plan, the DRP. The town is currently soliciting public feedback on the DRP summary. You can submit comments on the town website. The link is on the agenda. And those comments are due by June 15th, and they will be sent to Vineyard Wind per the agreement. There's no select board meeting next Wednesday, May 6th, because we may still be at town meeting. We don't know. And the next board meeting will be on May 13th. We have one additional announcement from the housing office. I'll just read it. The Town of Nantucket Housing Department and Barrett Planning Group are hosting the second community-wide housing workshop for the Nantucket Housing Production Plan and are seeking your participation. Please join us on Monday, June 1st in the Nantucket High School cafeteria from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Attendees can enter their name in a raffle to win gift cards from local businesses. Barrett Planning has also released Part 2 of the Housing Production Plan survey. The survey can be accessed online and it is on the website. Public participation is a vital part of the process, and the public's participation is appreciated. And that's it for now.
Okay. Are there any opening select board announcements or comments? Okay. Seeing none. We actually don't have any responses to public comments from last week. There weren't any particular questions. And we do have public comment this evening for items that are otherwise not on our agenda for discussion. Please limit any comments to a total of 3 minutes. And you're welcome to approach the mic or put your hand up online. Campbell.
Good evening, everyone. Campbell Sutton. I just wanted to sort of make a general announcement. My mom's let me know that there've been a couple of thoughts on our island home and how something else could be done. And I believe both of them sounded very rehashed, like we've already talked about it before and it hasn't gone by. And I'd just like to let people know that we're actually voting on the article that's in the warrant. We're not voting on bubble ideas that have not been brought to fruition. I think the people that are putting ideas forward, like $70 million of taxpayer money, and we could pay for to send the elderly off, and then we could pay for their family to go off, et cetera. That may be an idea, but nobody has fleshed the idea out. We have no details on that idea. And I think if that were an idea with details, then they should have created an article to bring forward to town meeting. The other one I was just hearing about was had to do with Martha's Vineyard skilled nursing facility or something along those lines, which I believe over the last 2 years has also been discussed and brought up at various and sundry meetings. That building and our building are not the same building. They don't have exactly the same purpose. So, and then the idea that was going along with that was that Friends of Our Island Home as a 501c3, along with the CPC, donations could be made to them, and then privately the Our Island Home could be built. And it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's my understanding that the only way the 501c3 for Our Island Home can raise funds for this building is if we pass this article at town meeting. So this article at town meeting is the article, and it is the thing that would allow for private donations. And without passage, that isn't possible. So again, another idea that hasn't been fleshed out. So I think we really need to focus on the topic at hand, which is Article 11. Thank you.
Thank you, Campbell. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening. My name is Patrick Considine, and I stand here today on paid suspension as the Assistant Supervisor in the 911 Communications Department. Recently, myself and several other dispatchers have been the targets of a retaliatory, discriminatory ambush by Police Chief Jody Casper for filing multiple grievances against her. Despite the overwhelming amount of evidence brought forth to this very select board and Town Manager Gibson, Casper remains in charge. In January, Select Board Chair Dawn Hill was served paperwork demanding an immediate suspension of Police Chief Casper pending an investigation on alleged claims such as discrimination, retaliation, illegal surveillance, labor law violations, and more. Since that letter, another dispatcher has been suspended, one has been evicted from town housing, and for myself, I was subjected to illegal deductions from my wages and benefits during a period in which I was designated as being on paid suspension. To add insult to injury, the town of Nantucket refused to pay me my full 80 hours last pay period, and town council recently offered me the opportunity to resign to silence me. We will not be silenced. It should be noted that when we filed our initial grievance against Casper for her blatant breach of contract and creating a mock third-party detailed training to further the cover-up, there are 3 steps one must follow. Steps 1 and 2 were denied by Casper and Gibson. Now, step 3 goes in front of the select board. These very 5 elected officials had a duty to intervene as our highest governing body, but they refused and denied the grievance. Not only did the board refuse the grievance, but they participated in the retaliation. I have here an email from Town Manager Gibson and the select board members, which serves as an eviction notice for this dispatcher from town housing on Waite Drive. The reason this employee was moved to Waite Drive last fall is because they were relocated from MPD's House of Horrors, also known as the Loran. HR wrote a proper lease with the understanding they would relocate this employee to a similar housing situation that they were displaced from, but instead they were relocated them with an eviction notice. To the select board, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Why have you not placed Chief Casper on paid suspension pending an investigation? Did your housing department attempt to persuade this employee to move to undesirable living conditions or to reconsider options even if the rent feels higher than you hoped, just to ensure he would vacate Wade Drive? Why didn't you relocate this essential employee to another town housing option? Town Manager Gibson, when will the remaining town employees receive their housing stipend that this town has been selectively giving out to other employees? Within the past 2 years, can you confirm that myself and the other suspended dispatcher, the owners of Act 809, the island's first ever Dominican restaurant, are the only 2 employees who have ever been suspended for secondary employment? Is there an open civil suit against the Northampton PD filed from when Chief Casper was the acting chief with claims that also include targeting the Hispanic population? I look forward to your responses. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak this evening? Seeing none, there's no new business. We have approval of minutes, payroll warrants, and treasury warrants. We can take that as one motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call. I'll go to Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0 on items 1 through 3. And then we will move to the town manager's report for an audit presentation.
Thank you. So our fiscal 25 audit is done. It's a little bit delayed due to the amount of audits that have to be done in Massachusetts by a limited number of auditors. Our auditor, Tony Roselli, is online. I think our most recently former finance director might be online, or if he's not, he's coming. But we can start with Tony, and we do have some finance staff here. Our treasurer, Mindy, is here, and she can speak to probably almost anything as she can. And Tony's going to take us through the presentation he typically gives for the audit exit conference, and he has a presentation that's in the board's packet.
And Sue Carmel is online too.
Oh, thank you. And Sue and Mindy both are the deputy finance directors. Thank you for pointing that out. So Tony, I think can.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? And am I
Yep.
on?
Good evening, Tony. Nice to see you.
Oh, nice to see everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. We, as Libby had said, we've gone through. I mean, there's probably about 6 or 7 reports we need to go through. There's an airport financial, there's a county financial, there's a town financial, town single audit. There's the end of year report with the schools. There's a management letter. So there's 6 or 7 reports we have to do every year. We also have to wait for things from the land bank, which is one of the entities we do not audit because they get incorporated into the town's financials. So we find ourselves finishing and then waiting for things, and then at the end we kind of pull it all together. So usually this is a typical time of year. We try to beat the March 31 single audit deadline and the March 27th bond disclosure deadline for the SEC. Those are our goals, and that was successfully achieved this year. The town also has completed an ACFR, ACFR, and that was also done timely and given to the GFOA for award. I'm sure you guys have seen the award in the past. I think it's about 12 or 13 years at this point, Libby. So it's something that hopefully continues with Brian's departure. Hopefully we can continue to provide these reports and get them out to the GFOA. So without further ado, let's go to that first slide and start the presentation. So I wanted, like typically we do this reserve analysis. We go through, and your reserves are your stabilization fund balances plus your undesignated fund balance. That's your reserve as defined by Standard & Poor's and Moody's. And so when we go through your financials, we add those 2 numbers together to come up with what the number is. And you can see that you kind of peaked in 2023. up close to $45 million. Then it drops significantly because you use some of the reserves, I believe, for affordable housing and some other things, some other capital type things, which the bond rating people were fine with that. They don't like to see the use of reserves for operating salaries and those types of things that could cause budget issues later. But they do like seeing that you're using that for one-time capital, snow removal, which isn't a really big thing down in Nantucket. But those are things that are typically good uses of reserves. And you can see that in 25, you bounced right back up to almost the high. So if I was to paint this picture for S&P or Moody's, in 24, I would say, hey, you've dropped your reserves. Why did you do that? Is that something we should be concerned about? And Brian's response would be, no, we intentionally did that to fund some one-time things. And we built into our process, our strategic process to bounce back from that spending. And that's exactly what happened. You can see that it went down from 23 to 24 and popped right back up. And that's kind of been the thing with Nantucket. Even when you've had dips, you've always bounced back. So it's a process that got you the AAA. You deserve the AAA, and this is exactly the trend they like to see on the financial side. So unless there's any questions on that, we can go to the next slide. The next slide shows the reserve ratio. So we take the numbers that I spoke of in the last slide, which is your stabilization fund and your undesignated fund balance, and we divide that by your expenses to come up with your reserve ratio. And numbers above 30% are exceptional. S&P requires 15%, Moody's likes 30, and you've exceeded both. And you can see how that compares to some of the state average and the S&P high-end metric. You go well above those two comparisons. Any questions so far, or should we go to the next slide?
No, I'll interrupt you
Okay.
if someone does.
Okay. So just to summarize, the financial trends remain excellent. The metrics are well above state averages. They're exceeding the S&P modeling and the Moody's modeling. And you walk in a very, very fine line between, protecting the taxpayer by managing the levy and also maintaining the reserves where the credit bureaus like it. So you walk in that great line, and that's something I'd like to see continue, in Nantucket. Okay, next slide. Okay, we talked about the AAA rating. You're one of 15 communities. And the biggest benefit of this is you guys are doing so much capital and bonding. You're saving a lot of money by having the AAA. You've got the lower interest expense. Your bonds are very attractive. So that's the one thing to take away from this slide is that you're saving a tremendous amount of interest expense, and that's great. And that's why you should always try to achieve to maintain that rating. Okay, next slide. Okay, couple of informational items, and one of them, I like to focus on it a little bit, is OPEB. So your OPEB, you're funding it every year, which is great. You're getting a great rate of return. But for those of you following OPEB, you got to be saying to yourself, why is that liability not going down? Why is it the same as it was 5 years ago? And I started looking at that because I said, this doesn't make sense. The town is doing an exceptional job of making sure that they're putting aside money for it every year. They've got it invested well, so it's earning a fair amount of investment income. Why aren't we seeing a notable drop? And what I saw is that your covered payroll has almost doubled in the last 8 years. It's up to about 80 million, where it was about 40 million back in 17, 18. And that's the key. So I just wanted to point that out to you for those of you that follow OPEB, that you're saying to yourself, are we doing this right? What are we doing? Well, what's happening is your payroll is going up. People are getting raises, you're hiring more people, your workforce is larger, and it's going larger and larger. People are living longer. So that's why that OPEB is staying right. Basically, it's kind of baseline right at 110, 115, 120, kind of in that area. So I just wanted to point that out, that you're doing a good job, but some of the geography is against you. And keep doing what you're doing.
I have a question on that, Tony. Have you
Yeah.
modeled what the town would have to do to have that start turning the right way? You know, either from funding, from putting more aside, or from, moderating the increases? Have you modeled it from various directions?
I haven't, because that would be a Parker Elmore. Parker Elmore is your actuary. I think Parker would be, if you wanted to, and he loves to do this, he would have a great person to have on a future select board meeting, and can go through exactly what's happening here and what the best ways to manage it are. The man is brilliant. He knows all about health insurance. He knows all about the different assumptions you make on these actuarial valuations. I haven't specifically gone in and modeled and said, well, if we double our annual investment, where do we end up? But that would be something that I would defer to him, and possibly get him on, a Zoom call, in a very near, select board meeting. I think that was Matt, right? That
Yeah, it
asked
was,
that.
Yeah, it was.
thank you, Tony. And I think that's a good suggestion for us, sort of, to going forward, because we're in a good times. We shouldn't be stagnant. We should be improving. So anyway.
Makes sense.
Okay, next was just network security. Remain vigilant. I know you had an issue a few years ago with the schools. I don't think you've had any repeat events, but just stay on top of it. Keep training your employees, your new employees. Make sure they're aware of what they're clicking on and things they're doing with their computers, and just remain vigilant, because the cyber criminals are always trying to get a step ahead, and sometimes they succeed. I just had another one of my towns was in the newspaper, and I hate to see that. I have this comment in every management letter, and when I see that, I'm like, oh, somebody did the wrong thing. So keep that up. I don't think there's been anything crazy that's happened in town for a while on the security end. Investment income, treasurer is doing a great job. We talked about this probably 3 or 4 years ago. We talked about what was happening in the market environment. Things were turning, interest rates were going up. Towns now had to start thinking like hedge funds. We have a lot of money. How do we turn that into a revenue producing asset? And Mindy's done a fabulous job of $7 million in 2025. That was an increase from I think 6.2 or 6.3 the year before. So keep doing that. She keeps the bankers honest. She calls them. She'll say, hey, we can do better next door. What can you do for us? She's really pushing it, and I love to see these sorts of results. And I wish all the towns I audit would take that approach with their excess money. So good job there. Next slide. Okay, now this is great. We have 3 items. We're down to 3 items. Back in 2013, I think I had 15 pages. And all of this has been, over the last 10 or 12 years, all of this has been addressed, all the old things. They've been cleaned, they've been streamlined. So we're down to 3 things that are worth talking about. The water inventory has been on here for at least 4 years. What happened back when the pandemic hit is the water department had to start buying in bulk, because they didn't know what the supply issues were going to create, what sort of pricing problems were going to happen. So if they saw an opportunity to get some inventory cheap and in bulk, they took that opportunity. As a result, they ended up increasing their inventory much more than it was prior to the pandemic. And it's actually a good thing to do because you are on an island. It's harder to get things, and having a good stock is a great thing, especially if there's some good pricing out there. The problem that I found with the water department is just the controls around it, the inventory counts, the counting it and then checking it with the recorded amount. Do we have inventory missing? Do we have it unaccounted for? These are the areas that I really would love to see improve. I did the inventory observation with the group down there 2 years ago just to show them how I would do it. And, I spent a whole day there with them. We walked around. There was inventory in the fields. There was inventory in the store. It was kind of scattered. It wasn't organized in any way. So I made those recommendations. Organize your inventory, count it at least every quarter, compare it to what you say you have on hand, find out what happened if it's not all there, or if you have extra, find out what happened. It might not have got recorded correctly. And I did notice that there was something, or Brian had mentioned that the water people were thinking of converting a building back there or putting a building back there that could house all of the inventory. So get the different spots of where inventory is, bring it all under one roof. That would facilitate the process of better inventory control. It was over $1 million at one point, where on average it was carrying around 100 to 200,000. So it's gotten to be a decent sized number. It has come down a little bit in the last year, but I still would like to see better controls down there. So that's my comment on inventory. If anyone wants to jump in, and okay. Next comment was, no, let's stay on that page. Let's go back to that page. Yeah, great. So stagnant balances. So this is creeping up. About 10 years ago, we did a little study of all your special revenues, all your capital projects, and you got lots of them, tons of them. So we pointed it out in the management letter. And Brian assigned certain staff certain buckets of funds to look at, work with department heads to see, hey, should we repurpose this? Can we spend it? Is it an error so we can recode it back to the general fund and turn it into free cash? So with Brian's work and his staff, that number got very low to a very manageable number for the level of activity in Nantucket. What we're finding is it started to creep up, and it's approaching $4 million at this point. So I thought it was time to step in and say, hey, we need to go back and do that same project that we did 10 or 12 years ago and start looking at these balances. Can they be used? Can they be repurposed? Are they coding issues? It's a big enough number that I thought I would have to bring it up. And so that's what I have on stagnant balances. If anyone has any comments on that, I'd be glad to take them. Okay, and
I just
Matt
one second,
does.
Tony. I have just I could wait, but I'll just do it now. For all these, if this is identified, is this something, Louis, that you you work with staff to say, okay, are you doing this? When is it going to be done by, et cetera?
Yep.
So
It's a little tricky with departments over which we do not have administrative oversight, like the school and the water department. We certainly communicate with them about these things, but it is up to them to follow up.
okay. Well, maybe we could ask them to come in and report, because this has been on 3 or 4 years, and some of this I just think, we inventory at Something Natural twice a week. So this is not, it's all pen and paper, but it works. And so I just think this is, so if we should find a way to
Brian
think about.
Purpett has his hand up.
Oh yeah,
He
Brian,
has something to add.
he's
Brian.
probably gonna tell me, fix me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To your question, Matt, it is something that prior to my transition from the town that I had talked to the water company director about. I think that the inventory balance is starting to come down. I think it was a substantial increase due to the timing with COVID and the delays in the ability to acquire some key inventory parts. But Tony is right. We did talk about it last year with them. There is money in a capital article, a borrowing authorization that they ultimately would pay off with retained earnings to build the facility to house all the inventory in one place, because Tony is right. It is kind of scattered over the entirety of the site at their location. It is something that I know that Mark does support and is going to, I think, be reaching out to both Mindy and Sue to start the dialogue to begin to address and rectify it. One of the key hurdles that he's faced this year has been that the software that they used to use, I believe, is no longer supported. So they're in the process of looking for new software, and I believe that they've settled on using the OpenGov and the CMMS platform that's being rolled out to address and deal with that. So it is something that we're aware of, and that they had that they do have the money to build the structure to support all of the inventory, and it is something that I urged Mark to put higher up on his list to get it done, because it is there is some potential control issues there that do need to be rectified. I'll just follow up and just make a comment on the stagnant balances as well, if that's okay, Madam Chair.
Yes, and then Brooke has her hand up with another.
So we, as Tony mentioned, we had done this a few years ago and picked up, I think, about $1.5 million, and it's something that is on my list to talk to Sue about going through the list. And there are some with no activity. Some of them we still were never able to find what they were, the intent of being able to use it was for, but there is potential to pick up some money, and this should be done again. And like I said, it is something that is on my list to talk to Sue about as they do the close, to sit down with the town manager and go through the list, and what we can take back to free cash is what we would do. And that would be consistent with the last time that we did it.
Thank you. Brooke?
On the stagnant balances, are some of these projects that have just sort of been going on for years, like our Island Home and other things that are funded sort of sequentially over time, different pieces of a project, and there may be lingering balances, or are they grants that weren't fully spent? Or could you describe a little bit what they are?
The stagnant balances that the recommendation is referring to is what's known as special revenue accounts. It could be federal grants, it could be state grants, it could be other special revenue accounts, gifts and donations and things of that nature that a lot of times, sometimes, a department will get a grant and then they'll just charge it to their operating budget, and then we won't be notified through the process of that. And so it's really looking to confirm that it's been spent. And if it has been spent and we can confirm that, then we would take that back into the general fund, basically as free cash, by closing out that balance. And the last time we did that, we were able to recover some money, a substantial amount of money, back into free cash for that. So it's not really related to capital projects, and it's more related to special revenue funds that be it grants, school grants, could be Chapter 90, but that, Drew has done we've worked really hard with Drew to clean up and get that taken care of. So it's more revolving accounts and things of that nature than it is the capital projects funds.
Thanks.
Anything else before we move on? Okay, Tony, you can continue, please.
Okay, the last bullet on this slide relates to the chart of accounts that the school department needs to comply with on their end of year report. Currently, Munis is not designed in this town to support the method that DESI requires for the end of year report. So the school department has to build all kinds of different bridges to get to those balances. And it sounds like an easy fix, but it's not. It would require some engineering in Munis and some funding. And I don't know, Brian, has this ever gotten off the ground? I know it's been there for about 4 or 5 years, this comment. And
so through you, Madam Chair, to respond to that, the school did reach out to a consulting firm who has expertise in Munis and the reach and the power to help with this. And I think it was about between $50,000 and $60,000 to do, and it's not something that the school has pursued. I think my recommendation would be that the town consider taking it on because and remapping the entire chart of accounts as a way to solve this, because I think eventually DESE says they're not going to do anything about it, but there's the likelihood eventually that they're going to force us into compliance, and it would be better if we did it on our time frame versus their time frame. So I think that it will not be completed for the board's information. It will not be completed by June 30th of 2026. So this likely will be a recommendation in next year's management letter, but hopefully it's something that would be worked on in fiscal 27. So it would be removed by then. But I mean, Martin is aware of it, but the school hasn't shown a great inclination to rectify this, because DESE is not putting in a large amount of pressure on schools right now. But Tony may have a little bit better insight into whether he believes that they will. I think at some point they will. So.
Yeah, I mean, they put it on the checklist for a reason.
Right.
Yes, it's there for a reason. So at some point they're going to say, hey, we got to enforce it at some point. Right now they're not. So we haven't really pushed it hard, but I like to put the reminder here that it's there. And like Brian said, you don't want to do it on DESE's time. You'd rather do it on your own time than in fire drill mode. So so I continue to just put it on there as a reminder. And that is that. I think
Matt has a question
Tony,
on
Matt
that.
again. I have a question. If this is remapped, if this is recoded, remapped properly, does it go away once it's a one-time lot of work, pain in the butt to do, but once it's done, it's done?
Yep, it is.
Okay. So,
And the impact, so the whole end of year report impacts your chapter 70 funding. The state, the DESE, which is the State Department of Education, uses the end of year report to determine where your funding levels are you meeting your funding levels, which all that stuff is fine in Nantucket, but they have a whole hierarchy of compliance requirements that they like to see supported in that report. And it's the only finding we have in that report. So it's not like the report is like a mess or materially off. It's just this one item that says your chart of accounts is requiring you to do different things to get to the final step. So they'd rather see, it's easier to make mistakes, in other words. They'd rather see your system be directly correlated with the way they would like to see it at DESE. So that's kind of the reason why it's there.
Okay, thank you.
I think, let's go to do we have another slide?
Tom?
You guys are all aware of this stuff. The bond market is still very volatile. I mean, we had a really interesting FOMC meeting this afternoon. So things like that affect the bond market. What's going on in Iran affects the bond market. What's going on in the stock market affects the bond market, and the bond market affects Nantucket, for timing your debt and things like that. Stock market, good news is it's been going up, but it has been volatile. It could impact your pension and OPEB if it took a turn down. And then we've also got some hints of recessionary fears, and I'm hearing the word stagflation, although I don't think I'm seeing it just yet, but I'm hearing, when I read things, I am seeing it poke its head back up. So again, you guys are all aware of this. You do a very good job with your budget. You take into account all these things, these outside influences that could impact your budget, and you do build in the buffers. You've done a great job with that, and that's one thing I can congratulate you on. So I just put it here as a reminder for the public who's looking in, saying, wow, what happened to this budget? Why is it this way? Well, these are all the things that you folks need to think about when you're building the budget and planning your strategy for the town of Nantucket. So that, I believe, is my presentation for tonight. You guys have been wonderful. Let me know if you have any questions.
I think Tom, Dixon has a question.
Yeah, I actually have a comment, but thank you, Tony. That was a very good presentation as always. Every time you come to present, it's really good. I just want to tease out one small part of the presentation, which is Tony mentioned network security. And I just want to say that in my 3 years on the board, right, even I've seen us really lean into that. I think the CTO of the town, Mike Alvarez, and Danny and the team do a really good job. We all have to go through training multiple times. We're very cautious about our email and phishing scams and all that. I know it's something the town admin has worked really hard to make sure that we're protected. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Tony, great presentation. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you all, and it'll be another year soon enough. So, Brian, nice to see you up there in the corner too.
And nice to see you as well, Tony.
Yeah, thanks. So have
Thanks,
a
everyone.
great rest of your meeting and a great night. And good luck at town meeting next week.
Thanks
Thanks.
so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Next up, we have citizen departmental committee requests and reports. Number one, we have a resignation acceptance for the zoning board of appeals alternate, Mark Poor. And I'd love a motion to thank him for his long service and
So moved.
Second.
accept the resignation. Sorry. All those in favor by roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
John Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0. Next up, we have a request from the airport to increase the fuel revolving fund spending limit from 8.5 million to 11 million, and Warren is here. Good evening.
Sure. If you want to share that, thank you. Good evening, members of the select board. I stood before you 3 months ago in January asking for an increase in the fuel revolver, as at the time the airport had gathered sufficient data from previous years' purchasing to find a solid cap for the airport's fuel revolver moving forward, which you did approve. But little will we know that months later, turmoil would set in the Middle East, and due to the recent conflicts and tensions, the price of fuel worldwide has grown extensively. I believe we are all feeling it when we even fuel up our own POVs, and the same holds true with aviation fuel. With that being said, the airport is showing anticipated fuel purchases for the remainder of the fiscal year, exceeding the fuel revolver limit. This would pose a budgetary issue on the airport, as any purchases above that limit would be required to be spent out of the airport's operating budget. And as the rules require, the select board has the authority to increase that fuel revolver limit. So I'm here tonight requesting the select board to approve an increase of the airport's fuel revolver cap for the remainder of this fiscal year of 2.5 million. So increasing the cap from 8.5 million to 11 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
John Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you. Next up, we have the Sconset Trust, a request for a preliminary review of a historic preservation restriction to be held by the trust for a property located at 6 Broadway.
I'm going to go ahead and review this for you. So the board has a conservation restriction and historic preservation restriction policy, which states that before either a CR or an HPR goes before you for approval, it needs to get reviewed by you, and then you need to vote to send it to town council for review and the issuance of a report. Everything seems to be in line. You have all the HPR information in your packet. So I would ask that you vote to send this to town council for review. And we do have Julie Mead, the executive director. Thank you. Here from the Sconset Trust, if there are any additional questions.
Any questions?
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
John Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0.
And
So we'll
Julie,
send that
I'll
on to
get
town
that to town
council.
council tomorrow.
Thank
So
you.
pending it for, yeah.
Okay, next up, number 4, we have a Natural Resources Department request for a waiver of the town noise bylaw for geotechnical soil test boring for the downtown flood mitigation project from Thursday, April 30th to Friday, May 1st from 10:30 p.m. to 5 a.m. on Broad Street and Easy Street.
I was going to go ahead and review this if you
Yeah.
have any questions. This has been some ongoing soil boring testing that's been happening in the downtown area on Cambridge Street, Easy Street, and Broad Street, and a little bit on South Beach Street. Most of the closures have been able to be partial, but because this specific location is directly across from Easy Street, and when they went down at the original location, they hit something. They didn't break anything, but like they weren't able to get through, so they needed to adjust their location, which is going to make it difficult for any truck traffic to get by to the steamship. So we figured some night work would be in order in that. And they're going to start after the last steamship goes out. They'll be done by 5 a.m. so all the truck traffic can go in the next morning.
And we'll notify all of the abutters, particularly the people who are in residence in the area.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And Leah Hill, our coastal resilience coordinator, is online if you have any technical questions.
Okay. Does anybody have any technical questions for Leah? Okay.
Move approval?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor by roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you. Thanks for coming, Leah.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the sewer department request for a waiver of the town noise bylaw for emergency Washington Street stormwater replacement project at 32 to 44 Washington Street for the night work.
Yep. So again, this is what we did under the announcement earlier. Because of a updated project meeting that we had today, it was agreed that this should all be nights to minimize impacts and to make it safe for the contractors to work in the subject area. So the work now is for night work, and it would be from the noise bylaws goes until 8 p.m. So I'm just saying 8 p.m. in case they need to do any setup, not necessarily closing the road. 8 p.m. until 7 a.m. Sunday nights through Saturday mornings. And that would be May 3rd through May 21st. And David is here if you have any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for David? We got the lowdown on it earlier.
This is what we heard earlier, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, all right,
yes.
move approval.
Okay, but and just make sure that particularly residents are
Yep,
notified.
we're actually doing some extensive outreach on this project. They're doing direct butter notification and other items, and we're doing a project webpage too, I believe.
Yes, we have a page as well. Yep.
Okay, so Matt made the motion.
Second.
Second. All those in favor by roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Next up, we have a hearing regarding a nuisance/dangerous dog complaint pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 157. I'm going to open with the,
I'm just noting that in your packet, there is a guideline to follow. We also have Officer Seamus McArdle here. We have Police Chief Jody Casper. We have the dog owner, Melanie Kodalak. So we'll start with that.
okay. So just to outline how we handle this, it's been a while since we've done one of these. We'll open the public hearing and explain the purpose of the hearing. And then we will first determine if the animal that they're subject of the hearing should be considered either dangerous or a nuisance animal. Second, we will determine what remedial actions/conditions the select board can order to mitigate the situation. We will swear everyone under oath that expects to testify at one time. The animal control officer will testify and explain the situation based on his findings. The owner of the dog will testify. Any victims will testify that wish to. Others with knowledge or involvement in the particular incident or incidents who want to testify should then be given an opportunity to testify. Then we will close the public hearing. The board will deliberate and take action where we would make a determination if the dog was either dangerous or a nuisance, and then what conditions.
And I apologize. I meant to note too that our Attorney Brian Riley from Town Council's office is on to guide us with this as well.
Yes. Good evening, Brian.
Good evening. Good to see you all.
So I will open the public hearing and I will start with anyone who wishes to be sworn under oath to testify. If they could please stand and raise their right hand.
And I would say anybody, if you have people here that are going to be offering any kind of testimony, they should also rise and get sworn in.
Okay, everyone standing. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Thank you. You may sit. This is not my usual job. Okay, good evening.
Can everyone hear me? So the purpose of this hearing, before I start, actually, I'm Officer Seamus McCardle. I'm a patrol officer at the town and Nantucket Police Department here. I also serve as an acting animal control officer for the town. So the subject of this hearing today is Melanie Kodolak's dog. Her dog's name is Pedro Kodolak. He is a 3-year-old hound mix, and he's approximately 71 pounds. I'll start off by explaining the initial incident when it was brought to our attention as police department. So on the 29th of March, 2026, we had an officer respond to a house where there was an incident between a dog and a cat. And upon the officer's arrival, the cat's owner had met with the officer out front and stated that Melanie Kodolak had come over to their house approximately 30 minutes ago to meet. From there, the dog had made its way around the residence. Let me back up for a second. So Ms. Kodolak was invited over to the house to take a walk with the owner of the cat. While they were out in the front yard, the dog had made its way, was off leash, had made its way into the residence, and had at that point began attacking the cat. According to the owner, he had to physically restrain and hit the dog using its collar to choke the dog in order to get the cat released. He therefore then rushed the cat to the hospital where it shortly was put down. According to the owner, there has been speculation that Ms. Kodolak was bragging about how many deer her dog has killed on the island. When the officer had left the scene, he had called Ms. Kodolak, who corroborated the majority of the cat's owner's statements regarding the incident. I then was notified of this incident, and I further contacted the owner of the cat, and I confirmed all the information as previously stated. I then contacted Offshore Animal Hospital to ensure that all of the shots were up to date. I then did place Ms. Kodolak's dog under a 10-day quarantine, and I advised her that she needed to retain a dog license for her dog, which she since has. I believe there might have been a clerical incident or error that has been since that bylaw citation has been since dismissed in court. And as far as the rabies vaccinations I received from the Offshore Animal Hospital, it was determined that the dog was in fact up to date on his rabies vaccinations. Throughout my investigation, once this hearing was brought about, there are past instances where we've dealt with Ms. Kodolak and her dog. I'd just like to make a note that in my initial letter to the board, there was an error. There was a date discrepancy. The first date, it would have been a call on the 12th. I believe it was the 25th of September. And this is just dating back from our most recent incident. I'll go back to what we have in our records. So on the September 12th, we had a caller call that in the area of Hulbert Ave, and Easton Street approximately 6:17 in the morning. The RP stated there is an aggressive dog running loose around the neighborhood without its owner. That's a mid-sized sandy brown dog with a collar named Pablo, last seen running towards the beach at Brant Point. States it's known to hunt and kill animals such as deer and has reported it several times, but the owner continues to not walk the dog on the leash. We had an officer respond to the scene at the time. By the time the officer got to the area, the animal and owner was not present. Later that month, on September 26th, the Massachusetts State Police received a call from Miss Kodalak, who had reported that she was walking her dog on Orange Street. The dog was able to get free from the harness, and the dog had severely injured the deer on Orange Street. Upon Sergeant Wright, after he spoke with Miss Kodalak, he went to 46 Orange Street and found a dead large female deer in the side yard near Cassius Court. The deer had severe wounds on the neck and a large amount of blood in the grass area. It is clear that the dog killed the deer in the area. That did not meet the parameters for her to receive any citation, as the dog was leashed and restrained at the time. However, the incident was documented through the Massachusetts Environmental Police. And then keep going further back on May 12th, I myself took this call. There was an incident with Miss Kodalak's dog again, had visited a friend's house. While the dog was in the yard, the owner of the property did have a cat. It was unknown to the whereabouts of the cat, but in this instance, Miss Kodalak was at the house with her dog, and at some point during the evening, Pedro did grab up the dog and shook the owner's cat with its jaws. Miss Kodalak did then restrain her dog, and the dog was then placed on a 10-day quarantine. And then on June 4th, 2024, we had an officer respond. We had a call in the area of 63 South Shore Road for a stray dog attacking a deer. The RP stated the dog had killed the deer and was aggressive towards him. We had multiple officers respond, as well as Sergeant Wright respond to that as well. Officer Gale, at the time, the animal control officer at the time, was able to conclude that the owner was Miss Kodalak and the dog involved was Pedro. As far as penalties for that, Officer Hutchinson at the time issued a leash law violation and an animal nuisance bylaw citation, and Sergeant Wright also issued her a citation for dogs running large in protection of deer. And that was the one with the video. Would you want to play that, or?
Do you want the video shown on the screen?
You can put up the video. You can play the video.
And that video was also shown to Miss Kodalak on scene per Massachusetts Environmental Police Sergeant Wright's report. In closing, Pedro is approximately 3 years and 3 months of age. He's a large 71-pound hound mix. It is known that large dog breeds like Pedro do not reach full maturity until approximately 18 to 24 months or 2 years of age. Since reaching full maturity, Pedro has been quarantined due to animal bite instances 3 times, once for biting and killing of a deer, and twice for biting in one instance of killing a domestic feline. Pedro has also been documented in killing 2 white-tailed deer. I present these facts to the board and hope that the correct decision is made regarding the Pedro being a dangerous dog.
It's Kodalak. You can come to whichever mic you prefer.
Hi. Thank you. Hi. I'm very sorry about the instance with the cat, the recent instance with the cat. I did not know my friends had a cat when I went to them. They had also known about my dog. They've walked my dog for me and walked with me for a lot of times. Pedro has a reputation of killing deer, I guess, from the spiral video that went around. I was coming back on the boat after being away for 4 months, and someone approached me and said, "Oh, this is the deer killer. He's killed 20 deer on the island," which is pretty outrageous. And what I was talking about when my friends thought I was bragging, which I was not. It's not a proud thing. I'm responsible for him. I've got training and a tougher harness so it doesn't break. As far as the first instance of the deer on South Shore Road, he has a really good collar, and I forgot the clicker, so I just ran back to my car. He was gone for about 8 minutes total. So, and I didn't see the video, but I saw a picture of him is what I was shown. And they gave me a citation for hunting out of season, I believe it was. The first cat that Pedro encountered was a feral cat. It wasn't my friend's cat at all. It's a feral cat that had jumped into the yard because I had made sure there was no cats in the area before I went to my friend's house, which Pedro had been there a dozen times. And the second deer account, there were deer everywhere last summer, and the deer went right in front of us on Orange Street, and he just jerked and broke the leash. And I was able to get him away, and I called the environmental police right away because I felt responsible for that. I do have Pedro signed up for behavioral techniques at the Offshore Animal Hospital and with a private trainer on the island. So.
Thank you. Are there any people involved in the incident that would like to speak? Okay. Is there anyone else with knowledge or involvement that wants to testify? Yes, please come to the mic and just state your name for the record.
Hi. I wrote a few things down so I get it straight. Rick Kodalak, been here 72 years. My family has had cats since I was a kid, and I went on to had cats. I never had a dog. But we've had plenty of cats. They seem to have 9 lives until they don't. You've seen the complaints here. I guess the last complaint, the main complaint, I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name I'll say his first name was Sonny. He was the one that involved with his cat getting killed at the house, and it's a dramatic story. Everyone feels horrible about it, especially Melanie. I just want to say years back, We had an almost exact situation at our house in my comment. The family plumber came by to fix a leaky pipe. He pulled up in his truck. The dog jumped out of the bed. He wasn't there 15 seconds, and his dog had our family cat pinned against the foundation underneath the porch. I crawled under, physically separated them. Our cat was severely mangled. We were all horrified. Later, we found out the dog had done this a couple times before. Everyone was upset and pissed off, especially the plumber's wife. What I didn't do was call the police. I didn't text or phone Mike with threats. The damage had been done, and none of us, knew it was on purpose. Blaming anybody wasn't going to bring the cat back or make anybody feel better. I mean, the reality is dogs chase cats and cats chase mice and birds. It's prey instinct. However, when Melanie tried to help in any way, she found the person who made this complaint, Sonny, immediately took some sort of eye for an eye approach. He started threatening Melanie. He texted, it's in your report. I'll read it briefly. Melanie's putting all these apologies in here, and he gets back, put the effing dog down, and we're going to press charges. And on and on. He started calling her and threatening her on the phone until she had to block him. He then called the police and gave him this version. That's why we're here today. Because, call the police. We're here. And that's the part I don't understand. Are we all going to make the situation better? Is this retaliation? I was off island when this happened. When I returned, I was inundated by people who were not at the Woods house when this happened, but all had dramatic stories of the incident. Sonny had embellished the situation where Pedro was a dangerous killer. And the knee-jerk reaction was always, the next time it's going to be a baby or a child. I know Pedro well, and it didn't make any sense to me, so I did what we all do now and ran the scenario through AI. Their response was, there is zero correlation. If a dog attacks a cat, he will likely be aggressive to a child. So I'll read it again. There is zero correlation. If a dog attacks a cat, he'll be likely be aggressive to a child. When Sonny pulled off his cat and pulled the dog off his cat, and when I pulled Mike's dog off our cat, the dogs didn't bite us. Their instinct had them focused 100% on the cat. Now, if two aggressive dogs are in a fight, we all know you don't get in there because you're going to get bit. Back to this, dogs chase cats and cats chase mice. You've seen the cartoons, etc. We're all here today to see if Sonny gets his wish to have Pedro executed, as he said in the text. Or at least your choice to have him branded as a dangerous dog. And I guess I'm focusing on Sonny because that's why we're here. And last Sunday I was at the brewery listening to
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
a point of order. Is
Yeah.
this testimony meant to be about the incident, not personal attacks on the parties?
I can remove that.
Excuse me. I'm asking a question that I'd like to address to town council.
Yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair.
To Brian Riley.
Yes, I would agree with the comment that anyone else who's offering testimony here needs to be restricted to the March 29th incident.
That's what I thought I was referring to. It was the person who separated the dog from the cat who made the complaint for that date. Does that answer the question?
I mean, I think you're going a little bit
Okay,
outside of the incident, but
Yeah,
if you have a point to make, just go ahead.
Okay,
Just move it along.
Just my world that this person was embellishing and the story 20 times fold, and other people on the island came back to me with it, and the knee-jerk reaction was, next time it will be a child. And I maybe the animal officer can tell us. I hit AI and they said there's zero correlation between a dog getting a cat. So I'll just read a little bit further. I'll shorten this up to 2 paragraphs.
Okay.
On July 9th last summer, I had an email sent to me by the director of Mariah Mitchell Aquarium. They rent the space in my building at 32 Washington Street, along with the beach. Melanie, my kids, and Pedro live in the apartment above. This is the quick email. It's just a paragraph. It says, "Hi, Rick. Hope this finds you well." This is the leader of the Mariah Mitchell. "Hi, Rick. I hope this finds you well. It appears we had recently had a small dog issue at the aquarium with a dog who was moved in upstairs. Apparently, a new dog came down, which is different than Pedro, came down the stairs today while we had a program and came in through the aquarium doors and barked loudly the entire time." Then she goes on to say, "Pedro is awesome and all the interns love him, and he comes down, does his thing, hangs out on his own, stays away, listens. He's been great. He's welcome here at any time." Now, that was an email I got on July 9th last summer.
We do have that in our packet.
Oh,
It
okay.
was
So
provided to us.
then what I'm saying to that, so here's the person in charge of the safety, education, and well-being of hundreds of kids daily and thousands throughout the summer season, welcoming Pedro into their operation. The email shown concerns of another dog barking, and that was enough for them to complain. These kids who attend the aquarium are babies and children of all ages and pet. Pull and poke Pedro, play with Pedro. These interns have witnessed Pedro's demeanor over a 2-year period among their clientele and have full trust in him. Melanie didn't bring it up, but she has numerous other letters in support of Pedro. I mean, I challenge anybody in this room or on Nantucket of an incident where he was aggressive to a human or aggressive to another dog for that matter. I know the outcome of that challenge because there are no other incidents. There's the cat incidents, but to humans and stuff, there isn't. And whatever, and in many of the allegations against him, there's 2 sides to the story. And I think a lawyer would, have a field day with this, but that's beside the point. But there seems to be no precedent that Pedro is dangerous or a nuisance to humans or dogs. And Melanie has him signed up for rigorous training not to chase cats or squirrels. That's it.
Thank you. I'm going to note Frank Daly has his hand up online. And Frank, I know you have some experience with this, but I didn't swear you in under oath. And I don't know if you have any direct relation to this incident.
Yeah, I'm
Let you
happy to
speak for
swear
a
in.
minute, but I did have to swear everyone who was going to give testimony in.
Of course, yeah, I of course, truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I just want to give a little bit of color from a couple different perspectives. One being that I am the owner of, well, previously 2 dangerous dogs as deemed by the town, one of which has passed on, the other is still very much alive. And I understand how difficult these situations are. I know that they're very traumatic. But I would ask that the board try to keep the temperature down because a lot happens after the fact. Because of the trauma involved in the initial incidents, it's very easy to, the blood pressure to go up and for everyone to get very hot. And, we're getting a very small picture of what's going on with this dog, with Pedro and some of these incidents. And it kind of conflates and it grows very quickly and it's salacious and our programming goes right to it. And later on, the temperature comes down and people look at things a little bit differently. And I'll say from my experience, people that spoke about my dogs at a similar hearing to this later apologized and said that they wish that they didn't. And that was with, the luxury of time, which we don't have right now because this is before you currently. And I think there's other mechanisms in place that could rectify the situation. And that's what I'm asking the board to do. I have run into Pedro numerous times, both on Nantucket and in Costa Rica. I have many children, as you know, and he is an absolutely wonderful dog. He's also run into my dogs, both my newer dog and one of the dogs that is deemed dangerous. And there's never any issues. There's never any aggression from Pedro. That is not to say these situations didn't happen, but I just want to give a little bit more color to this. And again, ask the board and the town and all parties involved to lower the temperature and look at this a little bit, from a 30,000-foot view. One other thing that I think is very important is after I went through this process with the town, I kind of drove myself crazy for a few weeks and I started documenting all of the online chatter about other people's incidents with other dogs. Dogs are biting other dogs, dogs biting children, all of these incidents. And it actually got up into the hundreds. And I realized I was just, I was going down a rabbit hole I didn't need to go down. And it led me to wonder, what kind of community do we want to live in? Do we want to report every single aggressive dog incident? I don't know. Do we want to have neighbor against neighbor? I don't know. And again, that is just to bring up or request a lowering of the temperature, step away from this a little bit, say, yes, this is a bad situation, but maybe there's other ways we can go about this where we can keep it as a community. Melanie, I'm sure, I haven't spoken to her directly about this, but I'm sure she wants to keep Pedro in good standing. And, you know, the thought of putting down a family dog is horrific to me, even if there has been bad incidents. I just think there's other ways of going about this. And I ask the board to take that into consideration.
Thank you, Frank. Did anyone else who was sworn in wish to say anything before we close? Holly?
I was not at the particular incident, but I've been a friend with Melanie's for many years, and I've known her since she's also acquired the dog and adopted him. I've been around him a lot. I spent over a week with them in a small house in her house in Costa Rica, and did not see any hostile behavior out of the dog. Another dog, actually it was stray, came right up onto the porch of the little house, and he wasn't reactive at all. I think what happened was horrific and traumatic. But I do feel like we've also had a cat who was outside of our house in our yard years ago, and a dog wandered in and attacked our cat, and we ended up taking the cat to the vet, and the owner of the dog did pay for the vet bill. We were very fortunate that the cat didn't die because of it, but I did not think that the dog that he had made him a nuisance to the community because he had attacked our cat. I just haven't witnessed any negative behavior from the dog. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter. The dog's been around her, and it's been fine. He's not reactive around people. Okay.
Thank you, Holly. Does anyone want to make a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Made by Matt, seconded by Tom. All those in favor by roll call: Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0. And now we have to talk about it.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I have a question for Attorney Riley.
please.
Good evening, Brian.
Good evening.
I have a question about the legal definition and difference between a dangerous dog and a nuisance dog. If a dog were so deemed either, how would that affect, I guess, furthering circumstances? Kind of what's the difference? And I see the criteria or our remedies in in the checklist here are fairly similar for either definition, but do you see what I'm getting at?
I do. I mean, I think the understanding and based on the definitions, which on the card of ours that's there are actually taken right from the statute. Yeah, a nuisance dog typically is more barking or perhaps destroying property or digging in someone's yard or the like, attacking, just animals. And so that's the nuisance dog. And the distinction between the two is if the board decides, well, this is a nuisance dog, you kind of have more discretion on what sort of remedial action you want the owner to take. For dangerous dog, which says without justification attacks a person or domestic animal, causing physical injury or death, or behaves in a manner that a reasonable person would believe poses an unjustified imminent threat of physical injury or death to a person or to a domestic or owned animal. If the board, in fact, votes to find it to be a dangerous dog, then in the checklist you referred to, the statute says the board shall pick one or more from those 7 options. Could also add something else, but it's actually required to pick one of those 7 options if you find the dog to meet that definition of dangerous dog. Hope that helps.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, that does help, Brian. I just have one follow-up. In nuisance dog under definition, number 3 has threatened or attacked livestock, a domestic animal, or a person, but such threat or attack was not grossly disproportionate reaction under the circumstances. Would, in this case, the dog, since it has killed another domestic animal, could it fall under nuisance dog still, or by definition, because the word death is not in there and is dangerous dog, it must be a dangerous dog?
I mean, I do think the board has some discretion there. I think there's not really any case law interpreting this, but we're under nuisance dog, where it says, well, the threat or attack was not grossly disproportionate under the circumstances. That may be where the other animal attacked the dog first, something like that. Perhaps that's kind of mitigates what the dog did. I mean, it does. Dangerous dog says, physical injury or death of a domestic animal. So it's. I guess I'm just saying that I think after hearing all the facts and you saw the letters of support and whatnot, I think the board still has discretion in deciding whether it's dangerous or nuisance versus, dangerous or nothing.
Thank you, Brian.
Matt?
If we're going to pick a couple things out of that list, I think whether we call it a dangerous or a nuisance dog, I think we're probably going to be asking for similar things as we did with Mr. Daly's dogs, who we haven't had an issue with since. So I think that I would like to. I think whether we call it a dangerous or a nuisance, I think it's a definition of dangerous, even if I wanted to make it a nuisance. But I don't think we should be putting it down because of what we've heard from everybody. I think we should be asking that it be on a leash and be controlled to avoid these situations. It's my only.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say right now, it's not even under consideration for me to order to put it there.
Yeah. No.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that the owner knows that. Brooke?
Yeah. The situation to me here is, my understanding is that dogs that are aggressive can be very pointed in where they are aggressive, right? And the fact that a dog is fine with children or fine with other dogs does not mean it's not a real risk with regard to other animals. In this case, we've heard about deer and cats. And so to me, it feels as though an owner really needs to understand that their dog is a risk to the types of beings that the dog has a history of and is prone to attack, and then it's incumbent on the owner to ensure that regardless of whether they know a deer is in the area or a cat is in the area, that they understand that that's a risk at all times for that animal, and therefore the animal should be under control of the owner at all times when it's out of their yard, out of their property, right? And that an extra level of care has to be taken if a collar with a remote works, ensuring that the remote is not forgotten. If having the dog on a harness works, making absolutely sure that the dog is unable to break from that harness. And I understand that accident happened, but with a history of behavior, I would have a higher level of expectation of care from the owner. And I think whatever we do here, there is clearly a pattern of aggressive behavior. And I think Melanie has said that she's signing up for training and she's looking to get her dog under voice control and to work through with animal behavioralists on this behavior to get the dog more under control. But it seems to me that this dog needs to be really contained when it's not on their own property, when it's on anyone else's property, even friends who've had experience with the dog, because you can't ever know whether there's a deer or a cat nearby. So those are my thoughts at the moment. I'm not sure where that takes us.
Well, is there anyone else who wants to speak yet?
No, I'm being like my colleagues.
I can't hear whoever's speaking.
Oh, it's
Malcolm.
it's
I'm
Malcolm.
sorry, I didn't put my mic on.
Thanks.
I was just saying, I'm thinking in the same lines that you are, Brooke, and my colleague Matt, of some kind of requirement of better control, however you want to phrase that or do it.
In my tenure, we've had 2 of these instances, and we've done things such as fenced in yards, having to be walked on a leash, having to be muzzled, and the I don't remember all of the restrictions right offhand. I don't have it in front of me.
One of them was banned from public property.
Yeah.
Or 2 of them. Same owner though.
So those are the type
Dawn?
of things. Yep. Brooke. But first we have to deem whether it's dangerous or nuisance or none of the above.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, through you, maybe to Brian Riley. One thought I had is I would feel more comfortable if we requested that the dog be assessed by a animal behaviorist and a plan be put in place for training, so that it's, so that there's a prescribed path that we can see. They can come back and report to us about. Is that something we could do?
That is, I have heard of that sort of as part of the order. Again, with a nuisance dog, the board can kind of come up with whatever they think is appropriate. The dangerous dog, you have that checklist, but also you can add in another condition such as that, get something, in writing from the training facility of what they think the dog is, what's up with the dog and what it's capable, what the plan is to try to get it under better control.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think with one of the prior hearings that you had, I'm thinking, I'm not 100%, but I think that we continued the hearing in order for the dog to be assessed, and then you heard feedback from the behavior specialist, and then the board took action then. Does that seem like it's anybody else's recollection?
I think you might be
That's
right.
how it happened.
Yep, it sounds familiar. Yeah.
Madam Chair, that would
Yes.
make me a little more comfortable. This is obviously out of my area of expertise. And I don't think anyone on this board is an expert in animal behavior, or it would be nice to have some input.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I completely agree. In the checklist here, number 4, for instance, is of no less the documented proof of no less than $100,000 of insurance claims. Well, we'd just sort of be basing it on nothing if we were to do that. But if we had an assessment from a professional, then we could say, then that, obviously we'd have something to go off of for some of these. So I think the kind of general universe is here, but I think that would be very helpful to make the next step.
Okay. I think that with the restrictions, we can impose similar things either way, whether it's nuisance or dangerous. I think unfortunately, because there was another domestic animal that was killed, that we have to deem the dog dangerous. And I think that we should take that action tonight. And then to come up with the restrictions, we can have an assessment done. But also in the meantime, because we're not even having another meeting until May 13th, we need to make sure that the dog is properly leashed at all times. You, yeah,
Yes.
you can come to the mic.
I just wanted to say that I have an appointment for behavioral techniques on May 7th, but also the other cat was not domestic, it was feral. So I can't say that there's been 2 domestic animals.
Oh, I didn't say 2.
Oh, you didn't say 2?
No.
Oh, I thought you said 2.
I just said that it was because it was actually deceased. It was killed.
The other.
Dawn?
Sorry.
Yes, Brooke.
Go, Brooke.
A question I have again for town council through you. If we don't deem the dog dangerous and continue the hearing, can we impose restrictions, or do we have to have the finding to impose things like getting an assessment and keeping the dog leashed at all times?
Yeah, I see. I mean, I think for if the board wants to order something such as a formal assessment from a animal behaviorist, I think that I would recommend to have that, enforceable, that the board should make a finding one way or the other. And then you could you could continue the hearing to decide if there's going to be any other, final conditions added afterwards. And I think that would be fine.
And may I ask the owner if she has a fenced yard that successfully contains the animal?
She does not.
She does not. She's indicating from the audience. Would you mind? I just have to have it on the record. I'm sorry. I know this is awful. Are you still at 32 Washington Street? So there's really no way to fence in your yard.
There's no
because
fence.
it's the beach.
It's the beach.
Okay. So that's not an option, Brooke. It would have to be fully leashed or indoors.
Through you, Madam Chair, I mean, you know this, but of course the town already has a leash law when it's off the owner's premises.
Yes, but we also know how that goes in practice.
Right.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
So just a reminder that you already closed the public hearing. So I don't know if Brian wants to advise if you continue it, if we have to reconsider that motion.
Well, I think we were going with imposing some temporary restrictions based on an evaluation where we could then finalize the restrictions, which doesn't necessarily need to be another public hearing.
I think
Brian,
that's,
is that okay to go that direction?
I think so. If, I mean, you've heard testimony from the various parties, but I don't think look, for example, if you come back in a few weeks and Ms. Kodalak is able to talk about, the assessment or training or what have you in the meantime, that wouldn't be a public hearing, quote unquote.
Right.
But you could, in my opinion, you could hear the feedback on the condition that you want.
We could basically get the report and we could have a back and forth like we have just had with the owner about crafting what we have to do.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just one more question. If we deemed one of the definitions, can we revise that after the report?
Brian?
I would say so. I don't think there's anything to prevent that. The board could reconsider, you could make a motion on that tonight. And, based on anything that comes to light afterwards, in my opinion, the board would have jurisdiction to, to amend whatever vote you might take tonight.
Okay, so we could go with dangerous and go down to nuisance, or go with nuisance and go up to dangerous.
Madam Chair, could I just have that clarified?
Yes.
Because dangerous does talk about the death of domestic animal.
Well,
So-
that was why I
we
thought
can't-
that
we
was
We can't
what we
bring the,
needed to do.
we can't bring the cat back to life. So almost by definition, it's dangerous, whether we like it or not. Yeah, that's a legal question, Brian.
He said we
I
had
see.
some leeway. He answered that already.
I mean, the definition kind of speaks for itself. If, that if, if the board finds that without justification, this dog caused the death of a domestic animal, which is what the information suggests, then that really does, put it under dangerous. I would agree with that.
The other point, in the state of Massachusetts, it's not legal for a dog to kill, rabbit or deer or anything else. There's fines, and the animal officer can require. I had a friend who had his dog was required to be put down for killing rabbits, and so you have to control the animal. I mean, that's even if it's not a domestic animal, you have to control it against others too. So I think that's important to understand.
Does somebody want to make a motion?
Shall I try?
Yes.
I move that we make a finding based on could we put that? Based on the information presented us this evening, that the dog Pedro is deemed to be a dangerous dog, and that the select board requires the owner to engage a behavioral specialist to analyze the dog and create a training plan, and that we schedule a date for that behaviorist to report back to the board. And in the meantime, the dog is required to be leashed at all times. And we, at all times.
I'll second that.
Okay.
When not in the residence, I guess, because they can't fence the property. So
Right. When not in the
inside the residence.
private
Yeah.
residence.
Yeah.
Or inside their vehicle. Contained.
Yeah.
And I would say a physical leash, not an electronic leash, to be very specific. A harness or leash that the owner can maintain 100% control of Pedro.
Okay. Is there anything further on the motion? Okay, I'll go to a vote. Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb.
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0, and we'll come back after the assessment. Not as a public hearing.
So do
will
we
we-
want to,
Well, let's schedule it for May 13th, but if that's not enough time, well, she has an appointment on the 7th.
I just didn't know if you wanted to require the assessment to be in writing, so it's in your packet, or is it just going to be Ms. Kodalak kind of reporting to you what it is, or do you?
I would say either a written report from the specialist or have them come and give a verbal report.
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
I think my motion actually included having the behaviorists come to the meeting because I'd like us to be able to ask questions.
Is that possible?
Okay. If it's not possible on the 13th, we'll schedule it for a different date.
And they can join remotely.
Yeah,
They don't,
of course.
they don't have to be
Yeah.
here in person. If it's off island, they can join remotely.
And if I can comment, my hope is that, as with Frank Daly's dogs, that Pedro's brought under control in a way that eliminates the possibility of this happening again. That's my goal here.
Rick, we're kind of done with this now, but do you have a question? You have to come to the mic because we have the recording has to pick it up. We're on the radio and everything.
Hi, just a quick question in the dialogue there. You mentioned when he comes back in, if you make him dangerous, you can change that to a nuisance dog. And you said you wanted to write that into the rules, and I just didn't hear that at the end here.
Did we want to clarify that, or I believe that was the advice of counsel that we have that option. I think the majority of the board still did feel that because the domestic cat was unfortunately died, that we really had to deem it dangerous.
But
I don't think we're going to change that, but the behavioral will help outline the conditions that we have. And just another thing, when we impose conditions, as things evolve with training, we can alter them in the future. I believe we did that for Frank Daly.
We did.
We
I think the dogs
changed
were
the
eventually allowed
provisions
on public
after.
property, and
Yeah. So some things were lifted.
Yeah, I think
And
they may have started with a muzzle, and the muzzle went away, and they were allowed.
Yep.
on
yeah,
property
there
again.
were things that were
Yeah.
changed after training and maturity, and so forth. So we're willing to work with you. It's our job to keep others safe, I guess. And
so we'll see you on the 13th.
yes, yes, but just be in touch with Erica if you can't make that work. Thanks.
Madam Chair, I can be in touch with Erica or the manager's office. We probably ought to send out a letter to the owner, just,
Yes.
recapping what's
Yep.
imposed so far.
I'll
Okay.
draft something and have you review it, Brian.
Thanks,
That'd be
Brian.
great.
Have a
Thanks, Erica.
nice evening.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. So we have now select board reports and comments. On a slightly or more pleasant note, this is Tom Dixon's last in-person meeting with us. And we would just want to recognize his service, and it's been a pleasure working with you and the knowledge that you've brought from your time with working for Dylan Fernandez and attending conferences with you, and your demeanor at the table has just been wonderful all along, and we will miss you, and hopefully we can come see you in California.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and for my friends who showed up to say thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure serving on the board. It's a real honor. Everybody should want their kids to aspire to one day be a select board member, because it's the best overview of the town you could ever want. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and if I could add, I want to thank Tom for being my seatmate next to me, and for just his rational approach to governing, and for his friendship. And the island is really losing a treasure. I know you'll stay connected, and Nantucket is in your blood, but we really are. We're going to feel the loss, both in government and in the community at large, for all the other things that you've done, and our SA and everything. So thank you for all your service to the community, and come visit often.
Thank you very much, Brooke, and that's very sweet, nice of you. I also want to acknowledge how nice it has been to work with town admin. We are partners in this, in the governance of the town, and all the things that we do, creating the warrant and so on and so forth. And everyone in town admin office, Libby, Rick, Greg, Erica, Katie, Deb, Maureen, are just fantastic. Every time I go in to sign something or have a meeting, it's been a real pleasure. So thank you.
Are there any other committee reports? Okay. Last up, we have a continued public hearing for an HDC appeal. Somebody's not muted. George, please. Sorry. Good evening. This is the appeal of the Schwartz Family Properties Trust, Gerald Schwartz and Heather Raisman, of Historic District Commission approval of their certificate of appropriateness number HTC 2025-08-13048, with conditions to install fencing, gates, and cattle grates at 11, 13, 17, and 21 Nonantum Avenue. This was continued originally from February 18th. There were a couple more continuances for other reasons to get to this date. And I would like to not rehash the entire discussion we had last time. Matt has watched the entire video and is up to speed. I know I have gone back and watched the tapes of the HDC meetings, and it also is my understanding that the applicant has deemed to not file a new application with any changes, which I will obviously come to you in a moment, Ryan Douglas, to speak, but that makes me think that they probably just would like a decision so that they can move on with this one way or another. Good evening, Attorney Douglas.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the Select Board. And I will not rehash everything, but I'll just make a quick statement and then I'll be done. For the record, my name is Ryan Douglas and I represent the Schwartz Family Properties Trust in this appeal. We're again requesting that the board overturn the HDC's decision and strike the conditions rather than remanding this back to the HDC. We have a system here that's driven by complaints and is administered without clear standards, and it's simply just not defensible because it invites and results in exactly what we see here, which is an inconsistent treatment of similarly situated properties and decision making that is frankly vulnerable to bias. I know that the Select Board record contains clear admissions about how that system works. I know at the last meeting, timestamp 113. In the Select Board hearing, Mr. Welch stated that the town works on a complaint basis. That was reiterated again at timestamp 13909, confirms this again. Just later on at in the same meeting at 13431, Mr. Welch stated that the HDC does not make decisions based on public input or public impressions, but that statement just doesn't align with the complaint triggered enforcement system. So a complaint is public input, just And if complaints are the gatekeeper for who gets enforcement attention, then public input is already driven outcomes from the front end. So we also did a public records request between last hearing and this hearing from the town. Those records reflected that multiple complaints were received in the same time frame for the multiple properties in the area, same as ours. Yet the town did not issue violation letters across the board for those comparable complaints. The most obvious example is the complaint record for 107 and 109 Surfside Road, showing a complaint was received, same reasons, but no violation letter issued. I understand same distance from the road as well. Meanwhile, actually in that public records request, there was no written complaint for my client's property. So I'll say that again. There was no written complaint filed for the Nonantum for the 11 Nonantum Ave case. There were only a few pictures that were submitted, but nothing written, no formal complaint, nothing. So when I pressed the staff, they said it was just a gentleman who walked in and complained orally. There's no written record, though, of a complaint being lodged. So when the trigger is complaint-based enforcement, which apparently does not even have to be in writing, and then you follow through with the inconsistencies even across comparable complaints, then the end result is selective enforcement and an arbitrary and capricious selectment. If you'll just a few more things, but the record does show that the HDC treated this file as basically a vehicle for punishment, not for objective design review. So the portion of the August 12th, 2025 HDC hearing addressing this matter begins at around 2:09 mark in terms of the timestamp. At approximately 2:12 into the segment, I know that Commissioner Oliver stated this guy does whatever he wants, and in the same stretch, she stated that she wants fines that are really going to hurt and that we need to do something to stop these people. So those are statements of animus and a desire to punish not just my clients, but to use him as an example to show the rest of the community not to install these types of structures. So Mr. Welch's comments in the same hearing enforce the same theme. He's making statements about wanting this written up in a newspaper to show people that this is not appropriate. And that ties directly into the next bit, which is that on the select board record at time 127:41, Mr. Welch says that the HDC has standards established for this enforcement process, but at 129, he describes the actual basis as local established practice, calling it a, quote, standard, if you will, unquote. And then he acknowledges that it is not written down. So in an enforcement context, an unwritten practice is not an enforcement standard in any meaningful due process sense. It's the public can't rely on that. So that's how the arbitrariness happens here. Owners are told one thing is inappropriate because it feels inappropriate, and the justification is that this is how things have always been done. And that's not a standard. That's maybe institutional memory, but it produces inconsistent outcomes because it can be stretched to fit whatever result the decision maker really prefers. And then the last thing that I would just ask is that, you have the letter submitted from our firm after the last select board meeting, but we point out how the record shows why this is not something that the select board should remand. At timestamp 1:30:16 at that select board hearing, Mr. Welch states that remanding would be a waste of everyone's time because the decision has already been made. And at 1:31:08, he reinforces that and says there is no value in remanding this. These remarks are admissions that sending this back to the HDC will not change the outcome and will not produce an open-minded reevaluation. It's just going to produce, frankly, more delays for my client around the same unwritten standard that's applied through this, complaint pipeline, so to speak, with the same decision makers already on record saying that the results are predetermined. So if the board's goal tonight is the integrity of process, then a remand is not what we should be doing. So ultimately, we would ask that the board reverse the HDC's decision and strike the conditions because the record so clearly demonstrates selective enforcement in unwritten and inconsistently applied standards, and in this case, frankly, a prejudiced tone that is incompatible with any type of neutral decision making. And we would ask the board make a decision one way or another tonight so that we can either have a reversal or we can bring this up on appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. George, is there anything you wanted to say? You don't have to, but
no, I have nothing to add. I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
thank you. And Stephen Welch is here for the HDC, if you wanted to make a few brief comments.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I appreciate the time. Before we get started, I just want to say, Tom, we're going to miss you. Wonderful job. And I understand why you didn't take my bid for you to become a planning board alternate. Okay, let's see. I was going to launch into, after the last two appeals, not understanding exactly what was going to happen here tonight, some discussion on what the standard is of the board's policy. I'm gonna hold off on that, but I will suggest that we all get together and consider some modification to the appeal process, not least of which is not unlike the prior adjudicatory process, that members or individuals who speak are sworn in. That would be a good way to start, I think, in keeping people honest and keep the conjecture out of the process. I think what I'd like to do is say a couple things for the record. The HDC disagrees with all assertions represented by the opposing party and its agents against the HDC. The HDC disagrees with assertions made by other parties at the prior hearing, portion of the hearing, representing actual and speculative interests, including some who have open applications in front of the board, who were speaking in opposition to the HDC. The HDC doesn't take this position to be disagreeable. These are blanket statements. The HDC decision was proper. It was not arbitrary, and it was not capricious. It's also inappropriate for the HDC to have to stand and rebut in an adjudicatory hearing matters not part of the HDC decision record, which is consistent with your own stated policies. And that includes gross contortions of the record. For instance, it was stated that at the last hearing, myself had stated that the applicant, to the effect, could associated my comments of 2 scoops at Yezi's with the cost of this project. My comment was actually in response to a process-oriented comment by one of the members who asked if we could, who looked to me as the chair, if we, the HDC, could request screening and also no cattle grades. And I replied, hoping to inject a little levity into a serious hearing, that would be like 2 scoops at Yezi's. The idea being we would get 2 scoops of what we wanted. And yes, we can, as an adjudicatory authority, the authority having jurisdiction, make more than 2 requests of an applicant. Let's see. Your hearing, obviously, as we all know, is about arbitrary and capricious. Processing of complaints by town administrative services is not a Nantucket HDC elected official determination, procedure, or process. The HDC has no control over that. So these comments about selective enforcement are not germane to this hearing, and they're not germane to the elected officials. We review the applications that are brought forth. We don't determine which applications are or aren't brought forth. Quickly, a comment was made by Commissioner Oliver at 212 about to the effect this individual gets what he wants. That was a previous a comment to which was off mic was to me with regards to a yellow parking line that was put in that area. There's an expanse of property there, and apparently that was one item. The comments she made about people were individuals who construct without HDC approval, and the level of frustration may or may not have been inappropriate in the meeting setting, but it was expressed as a genuine frustration that people just kind of do what they want. And in fact, the applicant's agent has presented a large number of applications where he can easily make complaints and the HDC will pursue them through its administrative staff apparatus. I addressed the two scoops at 2:15. It's interesting, HDC standards establish local practice. I'll let the judge deal with that if it goes that far. A local practice is a standard. It is not something that's whimsical or ethereal or not. It is a local practice. It is what we do. We did not, by the way, engage in fence or cattle grade standards just before or after this hearing, knowing that we had several on the docket, and we didn't want to be perceived, interestingly enough, as having a bias towards anyone, which is what we're being accused of now. So we would ask for a remand if you feel that's applicable. We note that this applicant appears to be both at the time of the hearing and afterwards, including with the contortions of the record, to be argumentative towards a single goal, which is to keep the fence and the gate and the cattle grate that they installed illegally in place. My comments that a remand would be useless was based upon that perception. If that perception was incorrect, welcome to bring it back and the HDC can review an application. That said, we would ask that you appropriately dispense with this matter, denying the appeal, and we thank you for your time.
Okay. What's the? Did we close? We didn't close.
You
the
need to
public
close the public hearing if
Right.
you're done taking testimony.
Are we done taking testimony? Okay,
We may not be.
please go. Oh, put your mic on, Malcolm.
I have a question for Mr. Welch. Does the HDC have specific written guidelines as far as cattle gates go?
Cattle grates, we have not. They are, there has been a precedent by vote that cattle grates are inappropriate on Nantucket. There are no cattle on Nantucket.
I realize that.
And as you know, and the concept of using, and I'm not being facetious, it's inappropriate. Texas, Oklahoma, someplace upstate New York where you have dairy farms, there's a purpose for them. They're inconsistent, incongruent, inappropriate with the character and setting of the rural landscape.
Maybe
on Nantucket.
Can I just follow up? Well, maybe we should call them deer gates. Is there any preconceived written policy about those type of structures to prevent deer from entering properties? There is no.
It's the architectural element itself that is inappropriate. We're using the convenience of calling it a cattle grate because that's actually what it's called. I don't think if you look up online where to buy deer grates, you'll find these. So labeling them something different to then determine whether they're appropriate or not. It is not the name that makes them appropriate. It is the element in the landscape that makes them appropriate. In a rural landscape, having metal rectilinear grates in a driveway area where it's typically stone, dirt, or shell, most often dirt, and more as the rural area develops, a cobble or a brick cobble or a Belgian block apron, to then introduce this metal rectilinear architectural element is just deemed inappropriate, regardless of what it's called.
Right. So these rectilinear medical structures there are others on the island. Have anyone else brought an application to put them in?
Where we have, the HC has approved them in instances where they are not visible or their visibility is mitigated by a serpentine shape of the driveway or so on and so forth. There is one instance where it was approved at the end of a dead-end street. This is none of those. And the discussion, there was not an offer by the applicant to relocate this to someplace out of sight.
There was a comment at the beginning of the hearing. Someone said they're not visible. It was before when you were all kind of getting organized.
The application that we received and the presentation that we received to my understanding and every member of the board, they were visible, or it would not have been the same discussion. And not, I'm sorry, not visible because they're hidden behind a gate. A gate is a temporary visual screening. It can be left open. Thank you. Sure.
So yes.
Brooks had her hand up, sorry. So, just quickly, because in my experience with the HDC, there are these trends that tend to come up that are not necessarily baked into the guidelines that were written a long time ago. And they try to keep up with them, but there is a lot of leeway in how they review. It's meant to be somewhat subjective, but with some level of consistency, if that's helpful. Brooke?
I'd like to ask Mr. Douglas, you referred to another property for which your FOIA request produced a complaint upon which there was no action. Could you remind me of that property? And I'd like to ask Mr. Welch if he recalls that property and if he can describe a difference between that and the properties in this hearing.
So thank you. So those properties would be 107 and 109 Surfside Road. And then I also believe that Mr. Fortin is in the audience tonight, who's the caretaker, and I believe he knows of one other property too, that also was subject to a complaint, but then no enforcement came of that. And just briefly to reiterate, there was no written complaint actually for this property, so I don't even know.
I understand.
So I don't know how it got to the HDC at all. So thank you.
Brooke, I'm going to invite Kathy Flynn up to the mic to address the administrative question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kathy Flynn, Land Use Specialist for the town. Ryan Douglas is correct. 109, 110, 107.
107 and 109.
Yeah, we get busy things, I've been involved with enforcement since 2019, and things do get lost in our workload, and that was one of them. So that's why an enforcement letter wasn't sent out.
Madam Chair.
Brooke has a follow-up.
As a follow-up to town council, is that inconsistency something we can consider in thinking this through?
Yeah, let me frame it though for you. In my opinion, where it might be relevant is if you're determining whether there is evidence that a reasonable mind would accept as sufficient to justify the HDC's decision. So if you see instances of other approvals of similar features that are, analogous to these exterior features, then that might be evidence that you could consider to say that the decision in this case is arbitrary and capricious because it's been allowed in other instances, or it's been allowed, in a more obtrusive way even than this one. So you do take the applications, one at a time and on its own individual merits in terms of the setting and the exterior features. But if there is evidence of other analogous exterior features which have been approved commonly, that would also be evidence that you could possibly base to overturn the HDC decision. So it's kind of a fine line that you do take each application as they come. But if you have, sort of overwhelming evidence that they've been approved in similar circumstances commonly, that, you could take that into consideration when determining whether or not to affirm or deny the appeal.
But George, I think the question, sorry, Brooke.
Yeah, I was going to say my question was a little different from that. I'm talking about the enforcement side, not the approval side. If there's inconsistency on the enforcement side, say the property at 106, 109 Surfside Road was essentially equivalent in terms of what you could see in the cattle grades, and the HDC did not follow through and enforce on that complaint. Does that create an arbitrariness on the enforcement side rather than the approval side? Do you see what I'm saying?
I don't see it as much from the enforcement side, because there can be any number of reasons why somebody would enforce something or not. You know, somebody might have complained about it. The HTC might have seen it itself. They might find out about something that required a certificate and they didn't apply for it and they went back. So there could be any number of reasons why something did or did not get enforced. I find that of limited relevance, and that's why I'm making the distinction. I think that it is relevant if you find that there were instances where something was not enforced, that's similar to here, that they are seeking enforcement. So it's not so much the selective enforcement issue as are there analogous situations where these are being approved and this application is being denied for some reason outside of why they got approved or not enforced in the first place. So that's the distinction I'm trying to make there. Is really, whether there are instances where these have been either approved or known, that they exist and that enforcement hasn't been taken, and they're a similar exterior feature that's now being enforced in this case. But it really goes to if there are instances of these being approved and, this one for some differing reason is not getting approved. So that's really where it comes from. And again, it has limited relevance too, because you are really going on the application at issue and looking at that and determining, are these exterior architectural features that occur in other similarly situated neighborhoods and surroundings or not. So it really is a fine line, but I really don't find the enforcement issue as relevant as are there instances, a clear pattern of evidence of these being approved. And somehow this one is being singled out.
Thank you. Ryan Douglas. And then Matt had a comment.
Thank you so much. And I think just wanted to point the board's attention that we, in our initial application, we submitted a package with a number of other properties that had been approved, many of which were far more visible from publicly traveled ways than ours. I just want to reiterate that. So on that's the basis for the arbitrary and capricious. So I think that there's more of an unfair and a due process issue with more of the enforcement side, not as much of a land use issue and an arbitrary and capricious issue. Just wanted to note that. Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, my question was for Stephen earlier. So Stephen, if this was in the bend in the road, when you look down their driveway, if this was in the bend of the road and you could barely see it or you couldn't see it, this would probably have been approved. Is that?
If this was a no visible or very limited visibility, depending on the circumstance, I have to disagree with the town's council. We can't, just because something gets approved in one circumstance doesn't mean because if we disapprove it in another that it's arbitrary and capricious. And maybe I misunderstood him, but differing decisions are based upon different circumstances. And there is no overwhelming evidence on the record that the exact same circumstances occurred and were approved. And in addition, some of these other, at least some of these, if not many, of the other applications that the applicant's counsel asserts the HDC approved have not yet been inspected yet for a final inspection. So we don't know that what was constructed is constructed in the location it was approved at, or with the screening that was required, or so on and so forth. So I think this arbitrary and capricious threshold seems to be getting lowered. And maybe I misunderstood that. And if I did, apologize. But to suggest that because in one instance something was approved, we could have, you know, a large gambrel that's approvable in Cisco that we would then have to approve on Upper Main Street, or it would be arbitrary and capricious. It doesn't pass the smell test. And the other just thing I wanted to say is the HDC did not know about the 107 Surfside, the HDC, the elected members. The Historic District Commission is not the Planning and Land Use Services staff, as you all know. But we don't get a report of what hasn't been enforced, what's complaints come in. It's not part of the process because it's part of an administrative process. We review the applications that are brought before us. So we're not involved in any type of selective enforcement. We're not involved in picking and choosing winners or losers or making determinations of which application does or doesn't get heard. If an application comes in under statute, we review it. Thank you.
I just have
Yeah,
one more
go.
question, just to cross off my notes, if you don't mind. And you mentioned this comment about he gets what his wants was not in relation to this particular property.
Yeah, we have a very passionate member. You may know Val, and she does a really wonderful job. And she was referring to the yellow parking line in the area and not having this applicant, to some extent, her understanding was that he received a nod and no parking in front of his property, which by the way is a beautiful property. I wouldn't want people parking in front of it either. So her comment wasn't about, none of her comments were about this individual or this fence. It was about, or the cattle grates or the gate. It was she was expressing frustration, perhaps not as appropriate as possible in this venue. And it was about other topics, the yellow line, people who build, who construct without HDC approval, and we have limited fining power and limited authority. I mean, our fines, it's not even the coffee budget on one of these jobs in a month. Like it's just not, it doesn't have any teeth. She was expressing frustration about that in all regards, those items.
Ryan Douglas.
The record is really robust. I think all the comments made in the last hearings, they speak for themselves. They're certainly they're very, very strong for the record. And I, again, just want to note that there was no written complaint for this property. I've said my piece on behalf of my client, and we would just ask that the board overturn the HDC's decision or otherwise affirm it so that we can bring this to court. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we want to close the public hearing if there are no more questions?
Yeah, I'll move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, it's made by Brooke, seconded by Malcolm. All those in favor by roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 4-0. Now we have to make a decision.
I'm letting people who've sat through 2 nights of this speak
Okay.
first. I have some
Well, I'll
thoughts,
go.
but
I mean, I continue to feel, as I have in the past, that arbitrary and capricious in their deliberative process is a very hard standard to say that they didn't meet. That there is a level of being subjective, and in an architectural review, every property is different, every application is different. There may be some flaws in the the administrative process that could be improved. There may be some guidelines that could be improved in the HDC's process as new elements come up that could be more clear to applicants to streamline things, to make things approvable on consent. The enforcement piece is really difficult, but that's not what we're hearing this for. This is about whether that board met, had a proper review and discussion, and made a defensible decision. And I believe that we should support the HDC. So, and I know that this is going to continue on in the process, and a judge will probably have more to say about it.
John, if I may, Matt, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm leaning your direction here, Don. I think what I find really frustrating about these appeals is it is by nature a subjective process, right? As you said, and it's very, very hard to find arbitrariness and capriciousness in a process that really is looking at each individual unique property at a time. I found that frustrating as an applicant, and I find it frustrating in this role. But I do. They went through the process, and the appeal process is what it is. They respond to submitted appeals, whether there's an understanding of how they get submitted or no clear administrative record. I think is at the point that this went before the HDC. They reviewed it thoroughly and made a decision. And as to whether or not these are visible, I have gone by the property. They are very visible and very close to the road. So that is not at all a question.
And I would just add that there is still the opportunity at any time for the applicant to submit a revised application based on the feedback that they've received from the HDC on both the fencing and the visibility of the cattle grates. That's not off the table. They could revise it and make another run at it. They could get a different landscape designer and make another run at it. Malcolm?
Yeah, Madam Chair. I mean, it's the thing that I think it's the process that, again, we need to look at. And we had a consultant's report on this a couple of years ago. We were going to bring it back for review, and I don't think we ever did we?
No, it got overtaken by many, many other things.
Yeah,
It
but
is still
maybe
out there.
maybe the next board should really, and I'm serious, because I've been on this board for 3.5 years, and I listen to the public, I read the newspapers, the issues with the HDC keep coming up. And it's not the fault of the HDC. They're great people, and they do. I would never want to be on that board. I'm sorry, never, because whatever you do is going to be wrong. So
close to the year.
It's hard. Yes. I mean, I don't see any arbitrariness here. I see a lot of problems with the process, and I truly encourage the next board to not let it get overwhelmed by other things, because until that's really sorted out and streamlined, this is going to continue to come up.
Well, what I would like to suggest is that, maybe at one of our next agenda meetings, George could come on and we could have a discussion about what our options are in revising this appeal process. And how to handle the hearings, because I do have some questions, and it'd be great to have two board members there with Matt.
And I should add, Don, that the options are pretty limited but they would be effective if you wanted to make a change. I mean, there could be changes in the special legislation the most glaring one is that the appeals don't go to the select board. You're having a situation where one elected board is hearing appeals from another elected board, but there are policy reasons in favor of your, hearing them as the select board. You get a lot less court appeals this way when the select board acts on these. So there's some competing interests involved, but the fixes are not as complex, I think, as people might be misled into believing. I think really the glaring one is, do you want to consider making a process where the appeals go, directly to court if somebody appeals one of the HDC decisions, and a few other tweaks in the special legislation. But the options are, let's just put it this way: there's an awful lot right about the Nantucket HDC jurisdictional regime, everything that you have building with Nantucket in mind, all the rest of it. They handle an enormous amount of applications, and somehow most of the time there aren't disputes that end up before you. So I just wanted to speak to that it is actually a pretty great process that you go through. It's unfortunate that every so often you have some of these painful appeal hearings that the select board has to hear, but overwhelmingly the statutory scheme has worked pretty well for Nantucket. But I'm happy to come to you at an agenda meeting and with some recommendations or answers to anything that you might have questions and concerns on in advance, that we can provide a potential markup of the special legislation depending on what types of issues you were interested in. I'm just trying to emphasize that it's not as complex as you might initially think.
Okay, thank you, George. We'll talk about bringing this back after town meeting as an agenda item to maybe talk about some changes. But we're off track because we do need to make a decision on this one.
One of my concerns with this is I look at some of these, whether it's arbitrary or I'm trying to follow the rules, et cetera. I look at something like this and I say, it's move it 30 feet. I think move it 30 feet so it's barely visible and it's probably approved and then we're done. I worry about if it didn't come, people had to go to court, I think there'd just be a lot of people who would just go right to court. And I think that would, and so I think that this is a function here. I wouldn't want to be, I'm not sure I want to see the town defending this in court myself. I look at the packet and I believe, when you start thinking of how lawyers think about this, how judges think about this, what does a reasonable person think is reasonable? And I think that there's some strong arguments in here, and so that we may not prevail on. And so I'm struggling to, I would love to see this remanded and then move it, and then we go on to enforce the others rather than, and one thing you struck me with, Don, that's real, like you talked earlier about how the HGC ends up being sort of at the forefront of these issues. And this isn't to do with what's happening tonight. I know we have to make a decision, but I think they are at the forefront of this one because so many places that used to not have any deer fence, et cetera, they're completely covered. There's nowhere for the deer to go. They're out in the street, the downtown, so every house that is doing this is making it worse for everybody else. And so that isn't an HDC issue, but they're stuck with it. And then we've got cattle grates and, in some communities, they say you can only put it around your garden. It has to be so many feet from your house or so many feet from the lot line. People don't allow what is actually happening here now, in some communities, because the deer become a nuisance. They're out in the traffic, they're out in the street, and so unfortunately this is something that's not just an HDC issue. I don't know how and I don't know how the town is going to have the time or the wherewithal to think this through and to do this, but it's a huge issue. And now here it's at us on this, we're supposed to focus on this little small part of it but I think it's, it's a lot bigger issue. And some of the things we've done from the HDC for all the screening, people saying, well, we have to put the fence up because the screening has to be, it's like, I remember when the HDC said, well, we don't care about the screening because we don't, the plants may die. So we just look at your building. And so we changed that to be more friendly to the building. We said, okay, we'll let you screen some stuff. But now we're saying we have to have cattle grates because we need to keep the screening alive. So we've sort of gone along this path over the last 20 or 30 years. And I think, is this how are we gonna, anyway, so I think that this is, unfortunate that we're here. I would love to see it remanded. I would love to see it moved back 30 feet. So, it's around the corner and then we could go on to the next and then maybe buy time to have the the homeowners here did a lot of homework for us. They've done a lot of research that could help, do the enforcement, help decide what the right thing to do, help, start pointing staff and the town in the right direction. But anyway.
The problem with the remand is it doesn't make it a revised application, which is available to them right now at any time. They could have done this the last 2 months, which was what I had hoped for. They didn't bring in a revised application. If we remand it, we're saying, here the same application again, and it's just going to be right back here. I mean,
No, that's what I'm kind of saying. I wish they'd bring a different one
well,
that they could approve it.
they don't need us to say to do that. I mean, I've said it over and over again, but I can't make that an emotion. And I don't think that the HDC acted in an arbitrary and capricious manner at that standard because they did give it a review. And maybe there were some, comments that weren't perfect by any means, but I don't think that it was malicious or that there was anything selective about this.
Can I have a George question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Pucci, so I understand if they were arbitrary, but what if just the system? What if we are not enforcing equally? What if we are, what if there are complaints and those aren't acted on, but others are? Is that something that if it gets to a judge that he could see as arbitrary and capricious, that he could overturn, or is that something, is there legal exposure that we are facing?
You will likely hear very vigorous arguments from counsel for the applicant in consistent with what you just said. Going
how do you think the judge will view that?
To the judge in the Superior Court. Well, I would hesitate to comment on what might end up being pending litigation where we're defending the decision. So I would hesitate to comment on that, but I am willing to comment that you can be 100% certain that counsel will be emphasizing those types of points to the judge. And those cases on Superior Court review are not based on the record. They're based on whatever evidence that the, parties seek to introduce to the court. So, yeah, you'll see all of those arguments made in the Superior Court case in the event that the applicant does, in the event that you deny the appeal and the applicant ends up filing a Superior Court case, you will see evidence and emphasis on those types of issues that you just noted. One thing while I have the floor, I just wanted to note in response to what Don said, I would remind the board, and this is kind of following up on Don's concern about a remand. A few years ago, we've been handling these for a long time. Several years ago, a different board tried to negotiate something through by sending it on remand. And it ended up a very painful, expensive case called the Montgomery case that didn't go so well. So a remand from the select board to the HDC is sort of has a lot of landmines in it. It's a very difficult process. There aren't standards really for the select board to impose, conditions of how the HDC will rehear it on remand. So it tends to be a better process to either affirm or deny the appeal, rather than try to, use a monkey wrench to remand it and figure out a way of getting to a solution, because that can end up just causing more time and expense and court appeals from that process. So that remand process is difficult. And as the chair said, there's nothing precluding the applicant from, applying early and often as many times as they want to go back and try to seek a modification of what's been ordered. And that is built into the statutory scheme, is that in the case of a denial, the HDC is to point out the reasons for the denial, so that something can possibly be crafted that they do end up with a certificate of appropriateness. So that, the remand procedure from the select board is, again, very cumbersome and has a lot of risk involved in it. And again, there's nothing precluding the applicant from going back and, trying again, hearing what the reasons for the denial were and trying to recraft something that could get an approval. There's nothing precluding that, whether or not a remand was ordered.
Thank you, George. Tom?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'll be brief because this has been a long night. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said here tonight. It sounds like for us to find our way into a remand for all the reasons George said and the chair stated, or to back our way into arbitrary and capricious, to basically set an example for a larger policy discussion that needs to happen outside of this appellant process, doesn't make any sense. And I think the HDC had the authority to do this. I think I want to acknowledge the appellant's frustration with maybe the way the HDC meeting went. There might have been some comments that were slightly flippant or taken that way, or they might have been given slightly short shrift at the end of a long meeting, because HDC meetings are very long and they have a lot of stuff to deal with every single time. But I can't find my way to arbitrary and capricious on this one. I agree with my fellow board members on that. But I also agree with Malcolm that a larger policy discussion needs to happen, and to tighten up processes and on this appeal process, because we're put in this very narrow box on these things, and constantly want to, I said I was going to be brief. I constantly want to say, oh, we kind of dip into HDC's material, but we can't do that. That's not our purview in these hearings. So yeah, I said what I had to say. And
really good.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to make a motion to deny the appeal.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And uphold the decision of the HDC.
And uphold the decision of the HDC, yes.
Yes. But we continue to note that the applicant can reapply with revisions. All those in favor by roll call: Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
aye.
Matt Fee,
No.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries 4-1.
Thank you, and we'll receive a copy of the decision.
You will.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, George. We'll follow up with you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Tom,
Motion to adjourn?
is there a second? All those in favor by roll call: Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Thanks, Brooke. Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0.
Have a good night, everybody.